Nicolas, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us. We've got your film here at the London Film Festival.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know anything about it, what can you tell us about Rudeboy, the story of Trojan Records?
Okay, yeah, so I am very fortunate enough to direct a film called Rudeboy, the Story of Trojan Records, which is about Trojan Records, but I guess the aim was to make it about something more. So whilst it's about the music and the style of that, early reggae era and in the 60s, and it became a film really about immigration and the power of culture and music to change society, I guess, or its biggest ambition.
And what first sparked the idea, and what was the journey to getting this film made?
Well, the first initial idea was about the fact that Trojan has just celebrated 50 years since it started, but at the time it hadn't. It celebrated about 48 and a half. So it was usually something like an anniversary, and it can spark those kind of things to put the wheels in motion. So I kind of joined it when it was a little bit of an idea to do something, and then myself and Pulse Films, who represent me, and Sam Bridger, who's my producer and an old friend of mine, basically put it together, an idea of what the film would be about, and then it's like, well, you've got to get the people and the music. We work closely with Trojan, although Trojan doesn't really exist anymore as a, it does and doesn't, to get that story going. So once it got going, it took off quickly,
And what are the mechanics of putting a documentary like this together? Obviously, you're splicing together fresh interviews with footage. How did you go about putting it together?
Well, because there's no archive of them, I realised quite early that the story, if they were telling it, there was not much to show. So one of the exciting things was like, well, I'll just film it. I remember just thinking, well, we'll just get some young kids together and we'll go and film it. And so honestly, people don't usually go, oh yeah, great, here's some money to go and do that. So the main thing was to speak to the people, get the story down. Like speak to as many people as we could within reason who were there and part of it, or were kids listening to it, whatever it was, And then it was like, right, let's colour this in. So we started to just go, well, the truth is in what they're saying, or their memories of what they're saying, which is kind of first hand. And then we just started going, well, let's just imagine and put the viewer as much as they can in the world that they're talking about. So it gave you an amazing license to just go like, we went and found like a beat up house in Cricklewood and shot like 4 things in it. And it was brilliant fun. You know what I mean? And you couldn't have done it without the young actors being amazing and stuff. But I think people it hopefully works because what they're saying is true and what you're watching is entertainment. And then there's archive in it when the archive starts to come in. But that's the sort of mechanics of it. We sort of got the story down first and added it in.
And what do you think the film has to say? I mean, what has been the impact of Trojan Records, and what are these musical genres, and what have they?
Well, musically, I think there's 3 things, right? The music is hugely, like the first time I ever heard any Trojan record at all was in a sample that's in a Dawn Penn song called No No No, which is Wait the Town and Tell the People by Rudeboy. And that's in the 90s, in the early 90s when that was properly released, and you heard the sample here, and the things like, you listen to things like Ghost Town by the Specials and some of their early music, and that music wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this music that came from here. You think about the way that they had sound systems that played what is essentially at the time was what we now classify as urban music. At the time, you have all that sort of stuff going on that's influenced, how drum and bass was shared. It's the same sort of way. White label records, singles, DJ sharing. That musicological impact is important. You then think that in the 60s they had flower power and hippies and all the things we think of peace and love, but no one really wears those clothes anymore. But you go down Carnaby Street and there's a Ben Sherman and Doc Martens and a Fred Perry around the back. So you've got style that stayed, and maybe there's influence, and there's probably people in here that I could point out that they wouldn't wear those clothes. It wasn't a bad thing, and that's obviously a massive influence people probably don't think about. And beyond that, when it really mattered, it's a story about why immigration and people sharing their culture can have a lasting impact above and beyond everyday politics and the sort of shit we spend our lives dealing with. And actually, sometimes that story of the dance floor, in this case, being it where you had proper integration that was non-judgmental for that period of time, and that is a slightly rose-tinted way of looking at it, because there's a lot of darker sides of it, because I think people are always fearful of other people, but hopefully it's a good example of a positive story about people coming together.
And
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, fine.
Final question. You know, what might you be doing after this? What, you got any next projects?
I don't know. Like, I kind of I always think it would be great just to make another one of a similar scale about something. Do you know what I mean? And whatever that is always, I guess, for any director, it's a combination of what you generate yourself or what people opportunities come along because people need something to be led out of into somewhere.
Yeah.
So let's just see, really. I mean, I think it's amazing that people are watching this. It's quite ridiculous that I'm sat here talking to you about it with the light on and chat. But you just got to I just hope people take it in the right way and see what happens after that. And, I think if you go into things with ideas about what you're going to do, they're usually worse. So just let it happen.
Roll with it.
Yeah.